Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Taylor Hodges. I am the Global Head of Customer Success for the Corrigo product at JLL Technologies. My session today is going to talk about strategic customer success engagement in a high-touch model and why outcomes matter. So a little bit about my background. I started my career at a small ERP consulting firm. We focused on mid-market solutions like Microsoft Dynamics and NetSuite. I was hired at JLL about 5 years ago. I actually started with the Corrigo product at JLL. It had been acquired by JLL, but it was still operating pretty independently. And I'll tell you in a minute a little bit about how that journey occurred and more about JLL Technologies' strategy when it comes to technology innovation. Started with JLL as a customer success executive. I was promoted a couple of years later to lead our high-touch team, and now I am leading our team for customer success for our Corrigo product. So today we're going to cover a few topics. We're going to define outcomes and why they matter. We're going to talk about creating powerful joint success plans, producing meaningful and measurable ROI, as well as understanding the impact and relationship with customer voice and advocacy, and how you make yourself relevant to the rest of the organization from a revenue perspective. So before I begin, I wanted to give you a little bit of background about our company and the journey that we've embarked on since about 2015. So Christian Ulbrich, our CEO, recognized that the real estate market was in desperate need of innovation. And so in 2015, we embarked on this journey to really change and disrupt the real estate market by leading with technology as one of our main value propositions. So in 2015, they acquired the Corrigo company. 2016, they acquired a consulting company called BRG. And you can see we've had some pretty significant acceleration since 2015 with multiple acquisitions as well as partnerships, investments, things like that. So 2019, JLL Technologies was officially born. Our solutions are focused on intelligent data, intelligent workplaces, and intelligent buildings. So we've got a pretty complex environment. There's lots of products in our portfolio. We've shifted, we've evolved, we've scrapped those plans, we've refocused, realigned multiple times since I've been with the company over the past 5 years. So it's been a wild ride, but very interesting, to say the least. In 2018, we also launched our JLL Spark Fund, which is our venture capital firm that invests on multiple prop tech companies globally. To date, we've invested more than $300 million. So I wanted to give you an understanding of how we used to be structured so that I can pivot into how we are structured now. In our old model, as of last year, like December, we were structured in this tiered model based on ARR. You can see we've got our low touch, our long tail at the bottom, one CSM to around 250 to 500 accounts. Currently trying to hire that position right now. Very limited engagement from a personalized perspective with our customer base. We've got our mid-touch that was from about 30K ARR to 110K ARR. CSM ratio is about 1 to 40 or 50. Hard to be strategic in that mid-touch space if you've got that many clients that you have to focus on. The expectations to do more formal QBRs or strategic planning was much less for this tier. And then we were engaging with these customers generally on a monthly or quarterly basis. Now our high-touch tier, definitely much more personalized approach, much more strategic, long-term success plans, quarterly QBRs was the expectation generally, and then weekly or monthly engagement with these customers. So obviously the ratio for that is going to be a lot less, with more like 1 to 20. And then we thought about doing a white glove paid service for a customer success person that can work with an account in a dedicated way. This never came to fruition, but we do have other business units in JLL Technologies that have adopted this model, and it's working well for them. I think it's definitely difficult to scale this model, but depending on the type of organization that you're in and the engagement level that your customers are requesting, this might be a good fit for you. Our revenue distribution. So our high-touch customers currently account for almost 50% of our revenue, but it's only 13% of our customer base in terms of number of logos. So we want to put a very big focus on making sure that we're engaging strategically with these customers because they make up such an important part of our revenue structure. This is for our Corrigo product alone. You can see we've got a couple customers that kind of skew the upper end of this graph, but really wanted to make sure that we were engaging effectively with these customers in a high-touch way. So our new model that we've just recently shifted to in the past few weeks is now that we are vertically aligning with sales. We're doing this because we're wanting to build subject matter expertise in specific industries. We want to create pods where we can create cohesion between our sales organization, our enablement organization, as well as marketing to drive the strategy forward in these different industries that we've decided to target on. We're also trying to adopt a new account strategy alignment or categorization that's part of the Sandler sales training methodology. If anybody's familiar with that, it's called CARE. There's 4 classifications. It's keep, attain, recapture, or expand. The motions that you're going to have with your customer are going to be different depending on the classification that they sit in. So attain, we want to support sales in any, pre-sales motions like RFPs, prospect meetings. We find that we have a much better win rate if we are engaged with those customers, particularly at the enterprise level, because they understand the value of customer success. And we're also providing success stories based on the outcomes that we achieve with our customers so that marketing can communicate to everyone all of the great things and how amazing our software is because we have the best software in the whole world and everybody needs to know about it. Recapture, we do have some focus around churn risk and mitigation strategies. What action items do we need to take to prevent churn in our organization? Getting other departments involved, whether that's product or support, anywhere where we've defined that there's a potential risk factor. And we're also meeting with sellers on occasion. Honestly, this doesn't come up very often, trying to recapture lost accounts. But opportunistically, we will do that. Where we have most of our focus and where we spend most of our time and energy is in the keep and expand classifications. So a keep account is somebody that, hey, we're going to keep them around. They have limited growth potential. We don't understand, whether there's an ability to broaden our relationship within their company, but they're happy generally. This could be somebody with either a passive or a promoter score, an NPS, that you just want to keep maintained and continuing to function on your platform. This is going to be a low to mid-touch approach. So in the past, when we defined specific tiers for customers, we said, okay, depending on the number or the amount of ARR that you have, you're going to get either a high-touch experience, a mid-touch experience, or a low-touch experience. Well, because we're aligning with sales vertically, we don't have enough CSMs to put them back into that tiered structure. So we had to figure out a different way to keep the same motions, but allow us to identify which accounts we wanted to spend more time on. So this keep model is going to be a low to mid-touch motion, primarily an automated verticalized communication engagement strategy. We're really planning on leaning on our low-touch program to help drive some of these engagements and understanding of these different markets and what's important to them. Now, Accounts that have been classified as expand, where we have those growth opportunities, those are going to get the most attention. These are going to have significant account planning with sales. How do we penetrate and broaden and create that multi-threaded relationship within this account? Our platform has the ability to provide value in a lot of different departments. We're not limited to a single scope. There's a lot of ways that our customers have figured out to creatively use it. And so we want to identify those opportunities, understand where we have best practices in certain industries, and try to target those other departments and identify those cross-sell and upsell opportunities as well. As you can see, we have as I discussed earlier, we've got a pretty big portfolio of products all across, workplace experience, asset management, sustainability. So there's lots of opportunity for us to grow these accounts as well. Very high ARR customers that may not have a growth opportunity, we're trying to understand what that looks like. It may be some sort of high-touch nurture motion, but we're working to figure that out as we move into this new account strategy. I love this quote from TSIA. Whether you sell hardware, software, subscription, or services, the best way to secure a solid recurring revenue stream is to ensure that your customers achieve their desired business outcomes. This goes beyond culture and maintaining good relationships, requiring you to consistently deliver. I think this is probably one of the most important phrases of this quote, consistently deliver. If you don't consistently deliver, you have risk, right? They're going to get the wandering eye. They're going to figure out, hey, I'm not getting value out of this solution. I'm going to go elsewhere. So consistently deliver against the promise of your technology and your customers' desired engagement throughout their life cycle with that technology. So at JLLT, our purpose is to help customers accelerate rapid and sustainable achievement of their desired business outcomes. That is at the forefront of everything that we do. Everything revolves around the outcome. We had a really great study by Deloitte. It was about customer engagement gaps or expectation gaps. And the study was published in 2021. It stated that 90% of customers discuss their desired business outcomes with providers, but more than 50% note that solutions do not fully deliver those outcomes. So it's more than half of those that were surveyed said, I'm not getting the outcomes that were promised to me, either from sales or any other engagement strategy that I had. Nothing's living up to the promise of that technology. It does take a village. It's not up to only customer success, right? Outcomes should be the center around which everything else revolves. The Deloitte study also talked about this integrated customer outcomes acceleration system. So you can see the customer outcomes in the epicenter of this acceleration system, and everything else revolves around the galaxy of customer outcomes. So everything that your organization does should be to drive toward those outcomes. If you're not delivering those outcomes, you're not delivering the promise that the customer received, and you're going to die. There's nothing else you can do. But this all represents just the different parts of your organization, whether that's through talent and culture development, whether that's through your digital tools and platforms, the automation strategies. It's around data and how you represent those customer outcomes. It's around operations and processes. It's sales, it's partners, it's marketing, it's product, it's everybody, right? But it's all around the customer outcome. So what do you need to consider when you're trying to drive this outcome-centered strategy? Well, what are the customer's desired outcomes? Have I clearly defined what the value proposition is? What are they trying to achieve with the purchase of this platform? How will the customer's journey be proactively orchestrated toward outcomes at each step? So I think one of the critical goals for a customer success professional is to orchestrate all of these different activities across the entire organization. We are the face to the customer, but we need to make sure that everyone else understands what those goals and objectives are as well. Collaboration and experience. How internal as well as external stakeholders come together to translate customer insights into action and deliver outcomes. So this could be an engagement with your product team. This could be a customer advisory board where you're trying to understand what actions can we take to deliver additional value to our customer. Enablement. What foundational processes, talent, and operational models must be put in place to enable an outcome-based approach? So you have to have the underlying framework to be able to support your initiatives as well. And then company impact. What are the dimensions of value that we in return can capture for ourselves? So yes, we are customer success. We love the customer, but we're all businesses, right? We're here to make money. So how can we capitalize on these inputs that we give to our customer, the outputs that they receive, the outcomes, and capture that as revenue-driving opportunities for our organizations? So when I think about customer success planning in our organization, there's really three main roles. And we're not going to talk about delivery or support, which I also think are critical functions today, but from a revenue perspective and understanding how you can make yourself not be seen as a cost center, we're going to talk about the three other major components of the customer success planning and those feedback loops that you need to perform within your organization. So marketing, right? Marketing should always align with customer success to understand how we present the value of our product to the market, what are the best practices, where we have opportunities for references, for referrals, customer success stories, so that we can demonstrate the value of our platform. Sales should also understand where you have growth opportunities, whether that's cross-sell, you're trying to get into another product that's within your portfolio, it's an upsell opportunity, new modules, new functionality, additional features, and how you execute on the best partnership between customer success and sales to drive value for the customer. I personally love partnering with sales when I go to do QBRs or things like that. It brings a different perspective, and they're the ones out in the market talking to people about what they want to achieve, what their goals are. We sometimes get blinded by our relationship with the customer, I think particularly from an enterprise perspective, and we're used to thinking inside their box, and having that different perspective is always helpful. Products should also understand where there's critical gaps. We're really working toward this, particularly with our verticalization strategy, because we need to understand what's relevant for this specific market, what our competitors are doing, and how we can do something much better. So why track outcomes? Well, we're tracking outcomes as part of a joint success plan because creating those plans that have joint accountability, you're accountable, your customer's accountable, well, it keeps them engaged, it shows them that you are listening to them, and it also helps you stay aligned with their critical business objectives. So these ongoing plans or the delivery of these outcomes makes you a part of their team, makes you accountable to the success of your customer. Achieving outcomes also makes them stickier, and it drives additional revenue, right? Outcomes are directly related to opportunities in many cases. So if they're achieving their outcomes, they're much more likely to stay. And you get the added bonus of making more money. Outcomes are also a key metric for how your customer measures value, and in turn, how much they're willing to pay for your product or service. Consistent and sustainable achievement of those outcomes create referenceable advocates and brand ambassadors. We're going to talk in a minute about how to drive those outcomes towards advocacy activities. Impactful outcomes also lead to better adoption, higher satisfaction, and higher NPS. And then it also represents the fulfillment of the promise that was made when the customer signed the contract. It leads to higher customer satisfaction and improved customer health. So what are outcomes anyway? How do we define these, right? If the expectation is that we're supposed to deliver these, how do we track them and what do they mean? Well, something that produces measurable ROI and or KPIs or SMART goals. It has a significant impact to operations, financials, or the overall business strategy of your customer. It leverages tools or people that you are selling them to improve and create value. It could satisfy a new legal, regulatory, or compliance requirement. So depending on the type of organization that you're in and the product and customer set that you have, this could have pretty significant ramifications for them if these outcomes are not met. It clearly defines their value driver or reasons for doing the work. Always, always, always requires joint accountability. I think this is huge. Your customer success professionals need to have that accountability along with your customers. If one of the two isn't in sync and they aren't balanced, then you're not going to achieve those outcomes. Outcomes also foster advocacy. If your customer is winning, then you will win too, because they're going to be telling all their friends about how amazing you are. I really had to go through this with my team a couple different times and say, okay, outcomes are great, we're going to measure these, we want you to track them, and they're like, okay, so any activity that I do with the customer is an outcome. Well, no, not really. So in my perspective, outcomes are not achievements met by the customer that had nothing to do with our product or service. Maybe they acquired another company, maybe they, had a record year in sales, but we don't have anything to do with any of those things, so that's not something we want to track as an outcome. It could be like a project, it wouldn't be a project status update, standard day-to-day activities. Hey, I reached out to this client and reminded them about something, or I said, hey, talk to support for that. That's not an outcome either. It's not a standard renewal activity. That's a base expectation of your role in our company. And so while it's awesome that you're getting that renewal, that's something that we're measured on as well, it's not an outcome per se. Something that you presented to them that they didn't actually deploy, right? Oh, we had this great idea, we're gonna do this, and they decided, oh no, you know what, we're gonna go a different direction, or we're gonna save that for later. Yes, it's great that you did a demo for them, but if they didn't actually do it, then we can't capture that as an outcome. It's not follow-up on support cases, it's not general reminders or to-dos, and it's not a basic adoption metric. So what are examples of measurable outcomes? How do we track these? We consider them in 4 basic categories. I'm sure you can come up with many others. It's either an operational outcome, it's a financial outcome, could be regulatory. As an example, we had a customer that avoided $5 million in fines by automating compliance activities through an integration that we built. It could be an experience outcome, right? So just here are a few examples of how we capture these and why they're important. So when we think about outcomes, it's a cycle, right? Success begets success is what was discussed yesterday. We want to define what the problem statement is. We want to make sure we form very specific and measurable goals, set a realistic timeline, track progress against that outcome, and then achieve that success. And then once you do that, it starts all over again. You continue to build on the successes to deliver additional outcomes. I'll tell you that somebody mentioned radical candor earlier. That's something that we've really embraced in our company. I think it works both internally as well as externally. You have to be honest with your customer. If they have this pie in the sky idea of something that they want to achieve and you know that they're not ready for that, or that they're going to run into roadblocks, you need to tell them. Don't let them think, hey, I'm going to achieve this outcome tomorrow if it's not realistic to actually get there. So how do we create joint success plans, right, that align with your platform or your product or service's value proposition, as well as the customer's vision? What do we track? Well, an outcome should have a very clearly defined impact statement. How is this going to impact my company if I achieve this outcome? When is it due? We've got to track our progress against that. Set realistic timelines. Prioritize it. What impact is this going to have, and how quickly do we want to get there? Who are the sponsors? Who are the stakeholders that need to be involved? What are the business drivers for them wanting to make this change or deliver this achievement? What are the KPIs that we're going to track that are associated with this? And then once you do achieve it, what was the customer sentiment about their experience? Right? If we got there, but it was pretty rocky, that's great. We got there, but are you going to use them as a reference about that particular initiative? Are you going to go to your marketing team and say, hey, there's a success story opportunity for this customer? Maybe, maybe not, right? So it's important to track all these things and make sure that they're all aligned. This is how we measure things related to outcomes, right? Because it is the center of that galaxy around which everything else revolves, we want to track all of the initiatives that help support that and the outputs in which it creates. So we track the number of outcomes that are created per quarter, the outcomes that are completed per quarter, and depending on that care model or that keep or expand classification, we have higher or lower expectations for that. We want to track the number of advocacy events completed. We also track success stories, which is a subset of advocacy events for us, but we've got specific targets that are related to success stories that we're responsible for delivering and that are dependent, or other departments are dependent on us for helping to deliver, like marketing. We track net revenue retention, the renewal rate, the number of willing references that we keep on hand at any given time, opportunities that are created and completed, as well as QBRs and EBRs. They're not dead, not for high-touch customers. So call it whatever you want. Call it a QBR, call it a value review. We've called them business ignitions in the past because we're forward-looking, we're innovators, we're not looking backward. Call them whatever you want, but you need to engage strategically in a more formal way with your customer, particularly in a high-touch or enterprise model. On-site customer visits. This is a big one for us. I think that the engagement that you get with a customer and the conversations and context that you have in those sidebar conversations, maybe at dinner or during a break or over lunch, are incredibly more valuable than if you have a one-on-one virtual session over Zoom or Teams, and people are multitasking, they're checking their email, they're not paying attention to you. If you can engage with somebody and sit across the room from them, the amount of the engagement is so much higher, you'll create a much better relationship, and you will establish that trust a lot faster. It's also much easier, I think, to engage with executives if you're out on site. Additionally, I also encourage you to walk the floor with these people. Go to their office, go to their building, go to their customer sites. Walk the walk so you can talk the talk, and understand what are their business challenges and how you can align your product or service to make that better for them through delivering outcomes. We also require that our customer success professionals drive the NPS response rate. While we might not necessarily be responsible for the score, we do want them to have customers that are engaged with us. If you're doing the activities that you should be doing, you should be able to get your customer to take a 2-minute survey. So I am running out of time, but outcomes lead us through this advocacy journey. So when we look at a new customer, we have an adopter. It's somebody that's not been on our platform very long. They may have a detractor NPS if they have been on our platform for more than a couple of years. But we want to drive them through this advocacy journey, and the way that we do that is through delivering outcomes. So we create adopters, loyalists, advocates, and at the top level, we want to create those ambassadors that are shouting our names from the rooftops because we're so amazing and they have delivered or achieved so many outcomes. So we also look from a revenue journey perspective, how can we align that with the advocacy journey, and what do we get out of this? So we activate the revenue, the customer signed the contract, they adopt, they're in business as usual. And then once we get to past that loyalist stage, we're building those advocates, we can really amplify and accelerate that revenue through building brand ambassadors. Ambassadors have the highest lifetime value, they're partners in your organization, and they're going to bring additional business to you as long as you're continuing to deliver those outcomes. Here's an example of how we classify advocacy events. But, I mean, really at the end of the day, the desired outcomes are what everything should be focused around. Lincoln Murphy, great thought leader in the customer success world. You can focus on adoption, retention, expansion, or advocacy, or you can focus on the customer's desired outcome and get all of those things organically. So, thank you. Any questions? Got a couple?
Oh, over here too.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
I really got a lot out of it. My question is about enablement. Where does enablement sit within your organization, and how does CS collaborate with enablement?
So enablement sits in its own group. We call it Learning Solutions team. We have a very great website that includes role-based training for our customers, as well as different FAQs. We do what's new webinars. We do, semi-monthly Q&A sessions where it's kind of open. So we're constantly in communication with the enablement team about, hey, we have a gap in this learning, we need some additional content. Either we'll crowdsource from some of the CSMs that have developed their own content, but we've really made some pretty significant transformational changes over the past couple of years on the enablement side, and luckily CS doesn't have to get super involved or build it from scratch anymore.
Got it, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, the hardest part about the outcomes is that customers are excited about it, but they don't have their baseline. Mm-hmm. How have you gotten them to be like, tell me where you're at right now with your, mean time to resolution or something? And they're usually like, we don't know where we're at, but we want to have it less. So how have y'all jumped that hurdle?
Be honest with them. Be straightforward and say, look, we can't set a target for less unless you have already established that baseline. Don't make it up out of thin air. Don't be a salesperson. But really have those real conversations and create a plan to help them get to that baseline. If that's something that you can do, or maybe you can refer them to another partner that can help them do that. Just really tell them the importance of establishing those metrics at the beginning, the foundational level, so that you can build upon it.
With your verticalization for that care program, curious if it's within certain, is it industries and that's how you're verticalizing, and then they're all doing that whole care breakdown within the industry? And if that's the case, then how are you handling the challenge of when a CS is becoming a subject matter expert within their vertical, and that cross training, filling in for backfills for things like that, or just if someone's out and you're so subject matter expert in your specific vertical, and making sure that the CSMs kind of have that cross training?
Yeah, so we have 6 total CSMs on the team. We've got 2 assigned to each vertical, and we have 6 verticals. So there's more like a primary and a secondary almost that are going to cross-train as SMEs on a single vertical, but each CSE has 2 verticals that they're focused on. Does that answer your question? Do you have any? Okay.
Question was actually related. What were some of the key factors in deciding to verticalize? I know it's
Sales told us to. I do think that there's a huge benefit in that because it does increase your industry knowledge. You can be much more effective when you're talking with somebody because you understand their business challenges. We also wanted to align, so we do a lot of participation in like industry conferences and things like that, and we wanted to build a thought leadership around those specific verticals. Also, to be honest, a lot of our competitors were doing it. So that's just how we've decided to do. It was very fragmented for the sales reps because of our broad portfolio to not be focused on a single industry because there was just too much noise.
With the care model, how is that tactically getting implemented across the verticals? Are you segmenting your customer base and putting that in Salesforce, or?
We are putting that in Salesforce, exactly. So that's a field that's in Salesforce. It also comes over to our customer success tool. And it's really just the feeling of the customer success manager at this point. We're literally just rolling this out as of a few weeks ago. So we'll need to iterate on that and understand how best to align that. We're also doing some things around account strategy with the MedPick principle and things like that. So it's a work in progress and it's going to evolve, but yeah, the CSEs that are responsible for those accounts would identify where they fit in that categorization model.
It's a really interesting approach. I like the creativity of it.
Got to do what you can, do more with less, right? So, since we used to have a 25-person CSM team, and now we're down to 6. Oh, wow. So we couldn't put 2. It just wasn't going to work for the numbers of customers that we have in each one of those segments. So we're trying to figure it out.
I'm curious for your willing referrals, do you work proactively with those contacts to decide how often you'll tap them to speak with prospects, or is that something you internally just track to make sure you're not going back to the same people over and over?
We track it so that we can show it to the leadership team to communicate the value that CS provides, right? So if we're giving 45 different willing references that was equal to this dollar amount in deal value, that's how we make ourselves relevant in the organization. We're not mature enough to say, hey, you talked to Joe Bob last week and we're going to ask him for another reference again, but we do request that if sales is going to use them as a reference, that they contact us first so that we can have that conversation with the customer prior to them saying, hey, here's your contact info, and people are calling them out of the blue. We want to make sure that we have that upfront proactive conversation with them first.